Oh man, has it been a whirlwind of a week here. And I mean that kind of literally too. I live in Texas and that hurricane just came through. Don't worry, everything's fine. Fences and power and all that stuff can be fixed. But that has been a whirlwind. The Kickstarter ending and all the fulfillment things and all the different type of stuff going on. And I feel like everybody finally has their PDFs from the Kickstarter. There's been a lot of troubleshooting on my end and on Drive-Thru RPG and all this other stuff. So thank you guys for your patience. And we've got it all figured out. Apparently, if you used Apple ID, there's some weird thing going on. But anyway, I thought it was a good time here to kind of give you guys a video that has been a lot of different questions, lots of different things have came up, and I wanted to talk about the origin story of DC20, how it came to be, where the whole process happened, and there's gonna be different timelines of it, and I'll put that in the description, or there'll be timestamps down below or whatever, of the early iterations of technically when that was D&D and where the early starts of DC20 kind of started to pop up from there, and then whenever that actually launched to then be where we're at now. So this could be interesting for some of you guys, and like I said before, last week was a thank you video, this week is the origin story, and then next week into the future, back to DC20 content. I got some stuff coming about different skill challenges, different other aspects of the game, sneak peeks to 0.9, lots of other stuff coming, so stay tuned for that. And as always, there's always gonna be those live streams every single Tuesday, 8:30 Central Standard Time, all that good stuff. So my favorite part of where DC20 came from is it also does have to do with a little bit of a family tie-in and my wife and a future potential release of DC20 Lite, which is a kid-friendly, family-friendly, rules-light version of DC20, which is where it's got started from. So to start things off, let's go way back to the beginning, where I got started in tabletop roleplay games in the first place. If y'all did not know this about myself, I was a obsessive World of Warcraft player, and in some aspects you could say I was a professional World of Warcraft player because I did get paid to play it. I played at a LAN center and people would come and watch the different things. I no-lifed World of Warcraft for a lot of time, a decade plus of my life all revolved around it. And so I was a mega nerd as far as that's concerned. Now, my wife, she was not a gamer nerd whatsoever. She has lots of friends, but she has lots of friends. She does lots of different things, and she's a social butterfly. She also started a little side hustle business of like selling some clothes and stuff. So now where does this involve DC20? Stay with me. She wanted to go sell some clothes with her and her friend at a local brewery. So I was like, okay, cool. So I had to, go help out, set things up, put all the stands up, hang up all the clothes, and get her kind of booth set up at this local brewery to kind of get things going. And I was just going to go sit in the corner, play a game on my phone or something. Who knows, right? So I'm at this brewery. I finished setting up and I look over and there's some people in the corner with these two tables pulled together, a Dungeon Master screen, dice, little figures. I was like, wait a second. Are they playing that game called Dungeons and Dragons? Wait a second. Let me see what's going on here. Now, I've always thought of myself as a nerd, but I wasn't that kind of nerd. Little did I know what I would become or what I was walking into. Is I didn't really like. I'm a super like video games and rule theory and crunching the numbers and figuring stuff out, changing rules, modifying rules. I've always been that my whole life. Even I guess maybe I should have rewound even further to the very, very beginning. Is I was that kid who would get paper and glue stuff together and make up my own board game, come out of my room and be like, Mom, Dad, let's play this game I just made up out of nowhere. I would take currently existing board games and change them, literally sometimes actually cutting up pieces of the board to change chutes and ladders to make it different, adding rules to it, taking away rules from it. I have been homebrewing since my board gaming early days. So then that's always been in the background. I was a theater kid in high school as well. I, was in plays and stuff. So I've always had like the character voices and that type of stuff. So I never knew what I was about to walk up to with this D&D table I was about to walk up to, how perfectly designed for me as a person it was, the gaming aspect of it, the storytelling aspect of it, the theatrics of it, all of that, right? So now I walk up to this table and there's like 5 or 6 people playing around and I'm like, all right, what's going on? And so I'm like watching them, and then they took a break, and I started asking questions. I was like, wait a second. So like, it's like you just make it all up. Like, where's the actual numbers? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, it's on this piece of paper. And I was like, well, you could just change the piece of paper. So I was definitely like mind blown. And I watched them play again, and I remember there was some sort of scene where they're at the top of a waterfall, the first scene of Dungeons & Dragons I ever saw. Top of a waterfall, a spellcaster polymorphed an Umber Hulk into a sheep. Another player tackled the sheep over the edge of the waterfall, and then it turned back into, I don't know. It was crazy. It was wild, and I was like, how is this happening? They were rolling dice, and like every rule was accounted for. I was mind blown, right? So after it all finished up, my wife's still selling clothes. I'm just sitting here watching this whole thing. The game master, or actually no, it was one of the players, was like, hey, yeah, you know, like I could run a game for you, you know, like no problem. I was like, oh wow, that's super awesome. I only have really like two, three friends at the time to be able to play with, so I was like, sure, you can run a game for us. So then that DM randomly ran a game of Dungeons and Dragons for me and my friends, and I was like, okay, cool, let's go. 3 sessions in, I said, give me the reins. I got to be the game master. I got to be the dungeon master. I got to do this whole thing. And after those 3 games, I launched my homebrew campaign in a homebrew world with a homebrew setting and all the things. I don't recommend doing that because I didn't know what I was doing, but I dove in, as I do with all things, head first and wildly. So now I'm playing this game. That DM turns into one of our players, who is still a player at the table in my home games. His name's Alex. And now that's our group. And that group of those, me and 4 other friends, we played a 3-year-long campaign from levels 1 to 20, told that whole epic story. And at some point during that is when I started the YouTube channel and all that stuff. So that's really the first phase of like this early, really TTRPG development stuff. And during those 3 years, I made a whole bunch of homebrew rules, all this kind of stuff. And then as I started the YouTube channel, I documented this whole process. Now, on to the next phase is this YouTube channel phase. I started a new campaign, really pushed the limit with some rules and some magic setting stuff, and I went for it in that way. A lot of the things were way out there, and I started to try and change up a whole bunch of different homebrew rules. In fact, this is where some of the early things that involved DC20 started to come into the mix here. Removing death saves. There are some rules in D&D that I wanted to change, but I feel like I couldn't because it was too integral to what 5e is. One of those is removing death saves, action points, mana points, a spellcasting system where you always roll d20s. I did an entire 2-year-long campaign of a magic system that did that. It was going to be a whole thing. It was going to be a whole system I was going to release, but then now it's just kind of turned into DC20's spellcasting system. Less attributes and wisdom and intelligence and all that kind of stuff. All of these things, constitution as an attribute and why it was an attribute since it has no skills, other things like that. So now I'm like really homebrewing 5th edition and pushing it to its limits and finding those limits and jotting down notes of where those limits are. And that is technically where the early startings of DC20 was. And then I'm still going this whole thing, and I have this massive list of rules and all these videos I'm making now on YouTube about these rules. And all of that turned into Alkender's Almanac. The first Kickstarter I launched, it was absolutely crazy. I had like 20,000 subscribers, which is, no joke or whatever, but it was relatively small still. And it did a $250,000 Kickstarter. Absolutely crazy. That is what let me be able to jump and go full time to try and really go for this thing, right? And Alkender's Almanac is essentially a 5th edition expansion of Dungeons and Dragons. And those of you who do have Alkender's Almanac, you'll see the inspirations of DC20 in there, different things and different rules that you'll notice and see. And if you want glimpses into the future of DC20, you can see where some of my inspirational head was at in Alkender's Almanac. And then the creation of DC20, I had a game system of DC20 at that point. Really, before launching Alkender's Almanac is when the 0.1 of DC20 was created, which was essentially me taking all of these rules, putting them into a pile that could work for 5th edition or could not work for 5th edition. This pile became DC20, this pile became Alkender's Almanac. Done. So now I had this game system that I could play. I was like kind of tweaking with it and stuff. Oh, but I have this YouTube channel to do. Oh, and I'm also still, and all these different things are going on. So it was in the process. And my plan, some of people I've told this to, my plan was that, all right, you know what? I know D&D is going to launch their new 6th edition, 5.5, 2024, whatever they're doing. I know they're going to do that in 2025. So 2024, 2025. So I'm going to launch DC20 like 2 years after that. I'll launch DC. I'll wait till this dust settles of all of that, and then I'll launch it. 2-3 years after. That sounds like a good plan. And then I just kind of kept slowly working on DC20 on the side, and ideas would come up and it'd go into that little folder and all that kind of stuff, right? So then, fast forward now a little bit to my birthday. It was my birthday, and what better thing to ask from your wife for your birthday than to play D&D with me, please? Again, like I said, she's not a nerd, and nor are her friends nerds in that way. So I was like, I really just want to play with her, and with, you can pick any friend. So she picked a friend, and so it was my wife was a player, her friend, and her friend's fiance. Boom, there we go. So now we had a group of 3. Let's go. But I lied to them. We didn't play D&D. That day is when we played on my birthday, so kind of fittingly so. That is when we played the first game, technically, of DC20. 0.1 DC20, and it was DC20 Lite. I did take the rules in which was DC20 at the time, however light they may have already been, and I chopped it way down to the point where it was digestible for brand new people who have never even played a TTRPG ever. And we played like a Hunger Games themed one shot. I do still have that one shot. I might turn that into a game to release to you guys. So we'll think about that. But anyway, they played it and it was super cool, but I needed to simplify the rules down. And this is where the by fives rule came in. That game and in creating things for that game is where that by fives thing came in. And playing it, I was like, this is awesome. I gave things like 3 health, and if they hit it, they dealt 1 damage. And if they beat it, the whatever the DC I set for the armor was, the physical defense armor class, whatever, if they beat it by 5, they dealt another one. Beat it by 10, they dealt another. Oh my gosh. I was like, that's just how things should. It felt so great to play. That is where that rule came from. So now with these, with what I learned from playing a rules light version of the game, I created 0.2 of DC20. Had a blast and it was super cool. And then now I had a game that was like, okay, I want to play this some more. This is also the timeline's getting blurred because it's where's Alcander's Almanac and all of this. So I still at this point in time I had quit coaching and I was still doing my last year teaching, and I was playing this version of DC20 with students, and I'd have time in the class periods. Maybe I should have focused more on some other things, but hey, I mean, they did their work. They're fine. It's okay. It's all good. So we would play. We also had a club. I was a club sponsor, and I was a co-club sponsor with another guy that was running off the tabletop roleplay club. So we'd play there, and I'd throw out the different stuff and be able to play there and kind of explore and experiment around. And then that's where 0.3 came into the picture of like having this DC20 Alpha 0.3 technically is what that was. And then that's where the OGL happened. I had made the leap, made the decision, and now we're here. And I had this game sitting off to the side that I had planned on launching to, at the time, like years into the future. But I was like, okay, now I have to launch the system. And everybody already knows, I've said many times, I launched the system at DC20 in response to the OGL because I didn't know if I was going to keep making content for D&D anymore from all the scariness of what that was and Creative Commons and all that stuff. So I took a leap. I took the shell of whatever the 0.3 was, and I dove in hard into it. I started working on this and this. I brought in Eddie. It was the first person I'd ever bring in to see the system and show somebody like, hey, I made a game. This is some stuff. And then me and him just would make calls. We'd have like 3 calls a week, and we just kind of talk about it and just kind of, and that's where 0.4 came from. And that is what everyone saw. The first release of the alpha, DC20 0.4, that is the version of the game that first saw the light of day into the public realm, right? And yeah, that's where the game spawned into existence, right whenever it launched. Also, I guess I should say, before launching 0.4, the 0.3 was also played at Gen Con. I left that part of the story out because I did talk about that last week in the thank you video. But the 0.3 was played at at Gen Con with a bunch of different influencers, a bunch of different people, random playtesters from Gary Con, then into Gen Con. And then once I came back from all of that, that gauntlet of playtesting, that's where the 0.4 came from and then released. So there's the full accurate timeline there. And then it was received extremely well from all the different people that picked it up online to be able to, because I this also, I've talked about this before, but I had to do a paid release of the game or I would have had to not make it. And it was literally at that point of like, okay, am I able to keep doing this? And then let's see. And sure enough, there was enough of a reception, patron support, and people who went and bought the alpha early access to make this thing possible. All went off and made it possible. And then now that turned into 0.5 and then 0.6 and 0.7. 0.7 is what we went to the top of the Kickstarter at. So 0.7 is where we led right up to the Kickstarter. 0.7 released, and that point is when I also made it free to everyone. So the alpha 0.7 of DC20 is free to everybody. It's also, link in the description, is going to be the free downloads. You can download the 0.7 version of the game for free and a one-shot, the Hunted one-shot for free as well. It was one of the Kickstarter stretch goals that we hit. The community unlocked it, and it's now free for everybody. So there's a free download section on the website now. You can get pick up both of those for free. Super awesome. And then the Kickstarter happened, and the Kickstarter is where 0.8 kicked in. Now, another thing about 0.8 is some people don't realize 0.7 to 0.8, there was 1 month of development time. And also keep in mind, it's development time and turning it into a PDF, polishing it off, editing, getting it to you guys. So there's really about 3 weeks that we had between 0.7 and 0.8. So then we made, like 3 big updates, put them in there. Awesome. And now we look to the future, 0.9. Right? 0.9 is going to be subclasses where every single subclass in the game, or every single class in the game, is going to get 3 subclasses to kind of fill them out and fill out the class fantasy and go into different branching directions, along with plenty more subclasses to come. I will have some other lists as far as the potential subclasses you may or may not see, sneak peeks. Those secret little sneak peek subclasses will probably make their way into some sort of DC20 magazine. DC20 magazine is the monthly magazine that I release on Patreon every single month. That's where stuff like that will come from. First issue was the Scion. We got some magic item stuff coming, level 0 stuff, things that we want to play test and show extra little content to kind of see where the future of DC20 goes. But 0.9 also is going to have some other things. Initiative changes is going to be another thing in 0.9 is changing initiative back to where it's just you make an attack check. All the combat is going to happen. You roll for initiative. It's an attack check. Cool. There's options. There'll be a variant option to swap out that attack check for a stealth check or intimidation or whatever you were doing. But it's going to be a lot more quicker and cleaner to get into it. That was one big piece of feedback. So stay tuned for that in 0.9 and lots of other little trickles of things coming in there along with subclasses. And then 0.10 is spells. Super huge, big. The big thing there is spells. And then 0.11 is off into the future to see where what things get developed next. Level 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all this stuff, all the way to level 20. You get the idea. So there's the rundown. There's the origin story, and then off into a little bit of the future of where DC20 is going. But it is a bright future, thanks to you guys. And I also am just freshly recovering from COVID, on top of the hurricane, on top of the launch and other things. So I have not taken that break that you guys told me to take yet. But eventually, maybe, who knows? But anyway, I love you guys. Stay creative. Thanks at the box. Peace.